This is AlquinaBlueArrowsPark. It's a park located right outside of Connersville, Indiana in Alquina Township. This park has a really strong and supportive community behind it. Most of the park board members attended the school that used to sit here before it was demolished. Through the work of the park board members, volunteers, and donors, they've made this park the success it is today. It is an actively used park by the locals, but it faces some challenges with things like the parking lot that are from the older infrastructure, so it's kind of a bit crumbly and whatnot. I have more examples of this stuff, but I will show that in a later slide. I take inventory of everything that's been added to this park or existed in this park, and I'll talk about their conditions. A main goal of this project for me is to develop a master plan that will help the community make informed decisions on the kinds of things they want to implement to the site. Having a master plan that shows the location of these potential improvements will help prevent conflicts when implementing these things kind of one at a time and not all at once. Here I want to talk just a little bit more about the greater context of the park. Like I said earlier, Alquina sits right outside of Connersville. If you look at the amount of park density in Alquina compared to a more urban setting like Connersville, you can see that this park is one of their few, and I think it supports the idea that we need to make it a high quality park. Some ways I plan on making it possible to actually implement a lot of improvements is to come up with some strategies to work against the economic restraints. To do so, I'll create grant opportunities in renovations or interventions. I'll create multi-phase designs so that they can implement things as they acquire funding. I'll create alternate designs at different price points, so if they're looking at this master plan later and they only have a set amount of funding at the time, they can kind of choose whatever works better. And then the stuff that I plan to implement needs to be focused on fostering the community. Getting community support will help the likeliness of actually implementing things in the future. Another thing to add is that although Connersville has more parks, they're in more of an urban setting. Alquina has beautiful view sheds of some rolling country / farmland that differs from the different setting of Connersville. The first school that sat on this land was built in 1890 and was here until 1956 when it was demolished and replaced by the more recent school. That school ran from 1956 to 2010. It closed its doors, it wasn't teaching classes. In 2014, the building was still being maintained. I know the gym in specific was still in good shape, but in 2016 it was demolished. But from then on, the community took it up and created the park that it is today. You can see in 2019 there was, in the demolished photo, there's the leftover concrete pad that I believe was part of the gymnasium. And you can see in the 2026 photo they put the pavilion there and were able to completely reuse that piece of existing infrastructure. So these were my community partners, Brayton and Rebecca. They were a great source of contact, and throughout the process of developing my plan, we met multiple times so that I can make revisions to get closer to their vision of what they wanted the park to be. The point of this graphic is to take inventory of all the design elements that are currently present at the park, their condition, and some of the general goals towards the future design. So to go through this quickly, R1 is talking about the playground equipment. Currently it's kind of worn down, it's definitely aged. A lot of whatever used to be the play surface at the bottom of these features have kind of corroded away. You can see some of the lining sticking through the ground. Despite this, it's still played on, but is definitely a main focus with future improvements. The Frisbee golf course has 9 holes right now, and you can play it backwards for 18. The baseball field is operational, but the backdrop is made out of netting. It has sagged. It doesn't look good aesthetically, but also this hinders its functionality a little bit. The basketball court was resurfaced with like these plastic court tiles. They're great for an outdoor court. The court will need to be monitored in the future though, because it was resurfaced on top of asphalt that is aged. So there's still some divots and bumps that might become bigger and bigger. E1's talking about adding some additional prairie style plantings for aesthetic value, with a focus on keeping it low maintenance. And then also kind of towards where the playground is right now, there's some properties to the east of it that could have some additional screening for some comfort and privacy. E3 is talking about the tree program. If the park ends up creating new spaces or pathways, it will be useful to have a tree plan that works in unison with that. Now getting to the community section, we're talking more just about general improvements that aren't recreationally focused, but also some community stuff. C1 highlights a sidewalk from the parking lot to the pavilion. It's the only sidewalk to the pavilion. It is currently made out of gravel, so maybe that's something that might want to be paved. C2 highlights how the existing asphalt on site is eroded and kind of crumbly, but is still completely functional. C3 highlights the existing memorial they have for the school. They have its existing concrete sign and an American flag. Something I proposed to my community partners when I met them first on site was creating a larger memorial that can kind of act as a center for event spaces. C4 kind of talks about how there's no signage or map of the current park. C5, towards the north area of the site, there's been discussed potential for a parking extension. And then C6 highlights that there's currently a bench program, but we want to make it more standardized so that it has a more cohesive kind of feeling across the park. Looking at some precedent images here, they reflect some of the goals that we saw on the last board. So for the playground, we want to do some natural play features. These are relatively cheap, especially if you're sourcing the materials yourself. Something we want to focus on is embankment play. On the site, it's kind of like a plateau where the school used to sit, so there's a decent amount of topo. This memorial concept kind of reflects the type of memorial I was going to make. It doesn't have fire or a fountain, but more of just kind of that seat ledge that surrounds it. Wayfinding signs pretty self-explanatory. With the bench donation, something that's cut out of kind of sheet metal like this might not be too hard, and maybe we can give people like flexibility on the design they choose. And then for like the winter interest plants, someone who volunteered here said that the plants or the prairies places in specific looked kind of ugly in the fall, so adding something with a little more color might help brighten it up. Now getting into actually designing these solutions, I made 3 concepts. Something that stayed the same across all of them, though, was the idea for that improved kind of memorial space, a larger trail loop and helps tie that area of the site together to where it feels like a more unified space. Now looking at the master plan, we get to see the inner you can see how the size. So if I was working at the city right now and I had to pick one of these kind of improvements to make, I can make an informed decision that won't have any. And the red ones are the ones that I'm proposing. With just the yellow systems, at the moment, you have to walk across grass to get to the play area, the storybook trail, the pollen, or from the memorial space they have there to the pavilion. Now looking at the playground. It is keeping two of the existing play features, being a kind of jungle gym with monkey bars and a swing set. It features log. And with keeping phasing the construction in mind, they don't. And then once they get some kind of grant or greater funding and they deem. An additional thing I want to add from talking with the client. Now talking about the. Additionally, you'll have like that rope so the kids can kind of climb up the rope with their hands while walking up the deck with their feet. On the areas that don't have play features, you might have noticed there's a prairie. The prairie mix does need to be mown every once in a while, so it does have some maintenance. You could additionally just put some kind of like river rock there and or this might need to be a catalog item. Now moving on to the other kind of highlight area, I designed the memorial statue. So when I did these rough sketches at A through F, I wanted them to be like at different price points and also just give them good variety. We really liked A, but something I had forgotten to consider while doing these concepts was the something important I added to this though was then going over to the eastern side, like near the where it's located currently is on top of a hill that kind of is blind to someone approaching from the west side. I had a graphic I prepared for them to take, for the park board to take to a meeting with the church that displayed some kind of more or speed tables to get traffic to slow down. Now I want to highlight the interaction